Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk to you about a truth that transcends time, culture, and circumstance. God sees your pain. Whether it is the silent tears you cry at night or the battles you carry in your heart, let me assure you that you are not forgotten. Pain is a universal language. It does not matter who you are, how much you own, or where you come from. Pain touches us all. No one is exempt. The rich, the poor, the young, and the old, all of us have encountered moments when the weight of life seemed unbearable. But here's the good news: pain is not random, and it is not without purpose. It is often the chisel God uses to shape the masterpiece of your life. Just as gold is refined by fire, your trials are preparing you for something greater. Scripture tells us in Psalm 34:18, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." This means that God is not far off, watching us struggle from a distance. He is close. He is present. He is there in the silent moments when you feel like giving up. And He is there in the loud cries of your heart that no one else hears. Even when you cannot feel Him, He sees, He knows, and He cares. Think about the seed. Before it grows, it is buried in darkness. It must endure pressure, isolation, and an environment that seems unpromising. Yet, it is precisely in that place that life begins. Some of you are in that dark place right now. You may feel buried under the weight of your circumstances, buried by rejection, betrayal, or the heaviness of grief. But I want to tell you this: you are not buried, you are planted. And when the season is right, you will bloom. What feels like the end is often the beginning of something new. The soil you are in may feel suffocating, but it is in that soil that God is nourishing you for your breakthrough. In the Gospels, we see Jesus moved with compassion again and again. He healed the sick, restored the broken, and gave hope to the hopeless. That same Jesus sees your pain today. His arms are open, ready to embrace you, to heal you, and to remind you that you are His. There is no wound too deep, no scar too old that His love cannot reach. God's compassion is endless. He does not overlook your struggles, nor does He dismiss them as insignificant. Instead, He invites you to cast all your cares upon Him, for He cares for you. When we look at the story of Joseph in the Bible, we see a powerful example of pain leading to purpose. Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. For years, it seemed as though his life was marked by nothing but pain and misfortune. But what Joseph could not see in the moment was that God was using every trial to position him for a greater purpose. When Joseph finally rose to power in Egypt, he was not just a ruler, he was the vessel through which an entire nation and his own family was saved. Your pain, my friends, might just be the preparation for your purpose. The enemy wants your pain to make you bitter, to fill you with anger, resentment, and despair. But God wants your pain to make you better. He wants it to refine you, to draw you closer to Him, and to mold you into the person He created you to be. When you release your hurt to God, He gives you His peace, the kind of peace that surpasses all understanding. You may not have all the answers, but you will have the assurance that God is in control. Pain often feels like an interruption, a detour from the path we hope to travel. But in God's plan, pain is never wasted. It is woven into the tapestry of our lives, shaping us in ways we cannot yet comprehend. Your pain is not the end of your story. It is a chapter that will lead to redemption, growth, and testimony. So I urge you today, do not give up. Do not let your pain define you. Instead, let it refine you. Trust in the one who sees, who knows, and who is working all things together for your good. There is purpose in your pain, and there is hope in your future. God bless you. Beloved, I want to remind you today that there is no pain so deep or hidden that God does not see. Sometimes the weight of our struggles can make us feel isolated, as though no one truly understands what we are going through. We may smile on the outside while our hearts are breaking within. We may carry burdens so heavy that we dare not speak of them, fearing that no one would care, or worse, that no one would notice. But let me tell you this: God notices. He sees every tear, hears every sigh, and knows every unspoken cry of your heart. God is not distant. He is not a faraway deity looking down from the heavens, detached from your reality. He is actively involved in your journey, walking alongside you through every valley and storm. David wrote in Psalm 139, 7-10, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there." This scripture is a powerful reminder that no matter where you are physically, emotionally, or spiritually, God is with you. You may be asking, if God sees my pain, why doesn't He take it away? That question is as old as humanity itself. Even Jesus, in His agony on the cross, cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" But let me remind you that Jesus' cry was not one of defeat. It was a declaration that even in His deepest pain, He trusted the Father's plan. God's presence in your struggles does not mean that He will always remove the pain instantly, but it does mean that He will sustain you through it. He will give you strength when you are weak, hope when you feel hopeless, and peace that surpasses understanding. Consider Hagar in the Old Testament, a woman who felt abandoned, rejected, and invisible. After being cast out into the wilderness, she cried out in her despair. And in her darkest moment, God revealed Himself to her as El Roi, the God who sees. He assured her that she was not forgotten and that her story was not over. In the same way, God is saying to you today, I see you, you are not invisible to Him. Every sleepless night, every whispered prayer, every moment of anguish is known to Him, and He cares deeply. Sometimes we mistake God's silence for absence. We think that because we don't hear His voice or see His hand at work, He must have abandoned us. But silence is not a sign of absence. It is often a sign of His trust in you. When a teacher is silent during a test, it is because the teacher knows the student has been prepared. In your struggle, God's silence may be the space where your faith is being refined and your trust in Him is being strengthened. And yet, even in the silence, God leaves signs of His presence. It may be in the kindness of a friend, the encouragement of a stranger, or the unexpected strength you find to keep going when you thought you couldn't take another step. These are not coincidences, they are reminders that He is with you, even when you don't realize it. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." What a promise. God's presence is not passive, it is active. He strengthens, helps, and upholds you. He does not merely watch from a distance. He intervenes in ways that may not always be visible, but are always purposeful. Your struggles may feel overwhelming, and the journey may seem endless. But God's presence is a constant assurance that you are not walking this path alone. He sees you, He knows your pain, and He is with you every step of the way. Whatever you are facing, trust that His hand is upon you, guiding you, sustaining you, and leading you to the place of healing and restoration. Beloved, I want to remind you that your pain is not without purpose. It may feel unbearable now. It may feel as though life has buried you beneath circumstances you did not choose and challenges you did not anticipate. But I urge you to shift your perspective. What if you are not buried but planted? There is a difference. Being buried signifies the end, but being planted signifies the beginning of something new. Just as a seed must endure darkness, pressure, and isolation to grow, your pain may be the very process preparing you for your season of breakthrough. Imagine a seed lying dormant in the soil. To an observer, it looks lifeless, covered by dirt, far from the light. But beneath the surface, something is happening. The seed is breaking open. Its roots are pushing downward, and its stem is pressing upward. The process is slow, invisible to the eye, but it is deliberate. Without the soil, the pressure, and even the isolation, the seed would never grow into the plant it was destined to be. The same is true for you. The dark seasons of your life, the times when you feel forgotten or overwhelmed, may be the very seasons when God is working the most in you. Pain has a way of cultivating qualities in us that comfort cannot. It develops resilience, patience, and dependence on God in ways we could never learn otherwise. Joseph's story is a perfect example of this truth. As a young man, Joseph had dreams of greatness. But before he could step into his destiny, he endured betrayal by his brothers, slavery, false accusations, and imprisonment. For years, it seemed as though his life was moving further and further away from the promise. But what Joseph could not see was that every trial, every painful moment, was positioning him for the place God had prepared for him. When Joseph finally became second in command in Egypt, he looked back and said to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Genesis 50:20. You see, Joseph's pain was not wasted. It was part of a bigger plan, a divine strategy that not only elevated him but also saved an entire nation. In the same way, your pain is not wasted. God is using it to prepare you, shape you, and position you for what lies ahead. What feels like a setback is often a setup for something greater. Think about the process of refining gold. The metal is placed in the fire, where the intense heat removes impurities and brings out its true brilliance. The refiner does not leave the gold in the fire too long, nor does he remove it too soon. He knows the exact moment when it has been perfected. In the same way, God allows us to go through seasons of pain not to destroy us but to refine us. He knows exactly how much we can bear, and he uses the fire to bring out the beauty and strength within us. Sometimes the pain we endure is not just about us, it's about the people we are called to impact. Your testimony born out of your trials may be the lifeline someone else needs. The comfort you receive from God in your suffering will equip you to comfort others in their time of need. As 2 Corinthians 1:4 says, "He comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." Your pain is not the end of your story. It is a chapter in the larger narrative God is writing for your life. Trust the process, even when it doesn't make sense. Trust that the same God who brings life out of the soil, who turns ashes into beauty, and who transforms sorrow into joy is working in your life right now. You may not see the full picture, but know this: God's plans for you are good, and he is using everything, even the painful parts, for your ultimate good and his glory. So when the weight feels too heavy, when the nights seem too long, and when you wonder if the pain will ever end, remember the seed. Remember that growth often happens in the dark, and the breakthrough comes after the breaking. Hold on to hope, for your season of blooming is on the way. God is not finished with you yet. Beloved, may I assure you today that God's response to your pain is never indifference. He is not a God who overlooks suffering or dismisses your tears. His heart is moved by your struggles, and his response is always one of compassion, care, and love. The very nature of God is rooted in his desire to comfort, heal, and restore his children. Throughout the Bible, we see countless examples of God's compassion toward his people. In Psalm 103:13-14, it says, "As a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him, for he knows how we are formed. He remembers that we are dust." This passage reminds us that God understands our frailty. He knows our limitations, our weaknesses, and the burdens we carry. He does not criticize us for our struggles or demand that we handle them on our own. Instead, he meets us in our brokenness with tenderness and care. Consider the life of Jesus, who is the ultimate expression of God's compassion. Time and time again, the Gospels show us moments when Jesus was moved by the pain of those around him. When he saw the multitudes hungry and lost, he fed them. When he encountered the sick and suffering, he healed them. When the widow wept over the loss of her son, Jesus raised him from the dead. His heart was always drawn to those who were hurting, and he never turned anyone away who came to him in need. One of the most profound examples of Jesus' compassion is found in John 11, where he raises Lazarus from the dead. Before performing this miraculous act, we see a deeply human moment. Jesus wept. He wept not because he lacked faith or power, but because he felt the pain of those mourning. Even knowing that he would soon restore Lazarus to life, he chose to enter into the grief of his friends. This is the God we serve, a God who not only sees your pain but shares in it, who weeps with you in your sorrow and rejoices with you in your victories. God's compassion is not just about feeling your pain, it's about responding to it. He is the God who comforts, who whispers peace to your soul in the midst of the storm. When you feel overwhelmed and broken, His Spirit is there, wrapping you in His love and reminding you that you are not alone. Isaiah 49:15-16 declares, "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has borne? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands." What a powerful image. Your pain is not ignored or forgotten. It is held in the hands of the one who loves you more deeply than you can comprehend. But God's compassion does not stop at comfort. It extends to healing and restoration. He does not leave you in your broken state. He works to restore what has been lost, to heal what has been wounded, and to renew what has been worn down by life's struggles. Psalm 147:3 tells us He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Whether your pain is physical, emotional, or spiritual, God's desire is to bring healing to every area of your life. There is no wound too deep, no scar too old, and no situation too hopeless for God's restorative power. He specializes in taking what is broken and making it whole. Just as a master potter takes shattered pieces of clay and molds them into something beautiful, God takes the fragments of your life and shapes them into a testimony of His grace. Sometimes the process of restoration takes time. Healing may not come instantly, and the journey may involve steps that seem painful in themselves. But even in those moments, God's compassion is present. He walks with you through every stage of the journey, offering strength when you are weak and hope when you feel like giving up. The enemy wants you to believe that your pain is evidence of God's absence, but nothing could be further from the truth. Your pain is an opportunity for God to demonstrate His love and power in ways you may not yet understand. In the hands of a compassionate God, even your deepest hurts can become the foundation for new beginnings, for greater joy, and for a life filled with purpose and peace. So, beloved, rest in the truth of God's compassion. He is not indifferent to your pain. He is moved by it. He sees you, He feels for you, and He is working in you to bring comfort, healing, and restoration. Trust in His endless compassion, for it is the anchor that holds you steady through every storm. Beloved, let us take a moment to reflect on a powerful truth. Pain often precedes transformation. While pain is never easy to endure, it has a way of breaking us open to new possibilities, new strength, and new levels of faith. Throughout Scripture, we see a recurring pattern before God elevates His children. He allows them to walk through seasons of difficulty that prepare them for the transformation ahead. Consider Joseph, a man whose life demonstrates this principle in profound ways. As a young man, Joseph had dreams of greatness, dreams that set him apart from his brothers. But before he could step into those dreams, he had to endure unimaginable pain. He was betrayed by his own brothers and thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and later imprisoned for a crime he did not commit. Year after year, Joseph faced trials that seemed to move him further away from the promise God had placed in his heart. But what Joseph could not see in the moment was that every step of his painful journey was preparing him for his destiny. The pit, the slavery, and the prison were not the end of his story. They were the chapters that led to his transformation. When the time was right, Joseph was elevated to a position of power, second only to Pharaoh, and became the vessel through which God saved countless lives. Looking back, Joseph recognized the purpose behind his pain, declaring to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Genesis 50:20. Joseph's story reminds us that God's plans are greater than our pain. The trials we face are not meant to destroy us, but to prepare us for the purpose He has ordained for our lives. The very things that seem to break us are often the things God uses to shape us into the people we are called to be. Now consider Job, a man whose life is a testament to unwavering faith in the midst of unimaginable suffering. Job lost everything: his wealth, his health, and even his children. His friends accused him, his wife doubted him, and he was left to wrestle with questions about God's justice and goodness. Yet, through all his pain, Job refused to turn away from God. He cried out in his anguish, he questioned, and he lamented. But he never abandoned his faith. What Job did not know was that his pain was setting the stage for a divine revelation and restoration. In the end, God not only answered Job, but also restored to him double what he had lost. Job's story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, God is at work, transforming our pain into a testimony of his faithfulness. These stories teach us a profound lesson. Transformation is often birthed in the fires of adversity. Just as gold must be refined in the furnace to remove its impurities, so too must we endure seasons of refining that strip away what is unnecessary and strengthen what remains. Pain has a way of revealing what truly matters, drawing us closer to God, and preparing us for the new levels of wisdom, strength, and purpose that lie ahead. Think about a butterfly. Before it can take flight, it must first undergo a complete transformation in the cocoon. This process is not easy. The caterpillar must shed its old form, enduring a period of isolation and struggle. But it is in that struggle that the wings are formed. Without the pain of transformation, the butterfly would never soar. In the same way, your pain may feel like a cocoon, a place of confinement, of uncertainty, and even of loss. But let me encourage you, the struggle you are enduring is not without purpose. God is using it to shape you, to prepare you, and to transform you into the person He created you to be. The enemy would have you believe that your pain is a sign of failure or defeat, but in God's hands, pain is a tool for transformation. It is the precursor to promotion, the pathway to wisdom, and the gateway to renewal. When we trust God with our pain, we position ourselves to receive His promises. So, beloved, do not despise the season you are in. It may be painful, but it is not pointless. Just as Joseph rose from the pit to the palace and Job was restored after his trials, you too are being prepared for something greater. Your transformation is coming, and when it does, you will look back and see how every moment of pain was woven into the masterpiece of God's plan for your life. Beloved, let me speak to your heart today. Pain is not the end of your story. Though it may feel overwhelming, consuming, and unrelenting, it is not the final chapter of your life. There is a greater narrative being written by the author of your faith. And when you choose to trust Him, even in the midst of your pain, you open the door for His peace to enter and carry you through. Trusting God through pain is not always easy. It requires surrender, letting go of the need to understand everything, the need to control the outcome, and the temptation to rely on your own strength. But when you surrender your hurt to God, something beautiful happens. He takes your burden and exchanges it for His peace. This peace is not like what the world offers. It is not dependent on circumstances or fleeting emotions. It is the peace of God that surpasses all understanding, as described in Philippians 4:7. It is the assurance that no matter what you are facing, God is in control. It is the calm in the storm, the anchor that holds you steady when everything around you is shifting. Consider the story of Jesus and His disciples in the boat during the storm. The wind was raging, the waves were crashing, and the disciples were terrified. Yet in the midst of the chaos, Jesus was asleep, unshaken by the storm. When the disciples cried out to Him, He rebuked the wind and the waves, and there was a great calm. Jesus then asked them, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Mark 4:40. This story reminds us that peace is not the absence of storms, but the presence of Jesus in the storm. When we trust Him, we can find rest even in the midst of pain, knowing that He is with us and has the power to calm the storms in our lives. Trusting God also brings guidance. Pain can leave us feeling lost, unsure of which way to turn or what to do next. But when we lean on God, He directs our steps. Proverbs 3:5-6 encourages us to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. Even when the way forward seems unclear, God's wisdom will guide you. He does not promise to remove every obstacle, but He does promise to walk with you and lead you through them. When you trust God, you also position yourself for ultimate victory. The enemy wants you to believe that your pain is permanent, that it is the end of the road. But God has a different plan. In Romans 8:28, we are reminded that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. This means that even your pain is not wasted. God is using it to accomplish something greater than you can imagine. Look at the life of Paul, who endured beatings, imprisonment, shipwrecks, and countless trials for the sake of the gospel. Yet, in the midst of his suffering, Paul wrote these words: "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." 2 Corinthians 4:8-9. Paul understood that pain was not the end of his story. He trusted God, and that trust gave him the strength to persevere, the peace to endure, and the confidence to declare victory even in the face of adversity. When you place your pain in God's hands, He transforms it. He uses it to strengthen you, to refine you, and to bring glory to His name. And while the process may not always make sense, the outcome will always reflect His goodness and faithfulness. Beloved, you are not alone in your pain, and you are not without hope. Trusting God does not mean you will never feel sorrow or struggle. It means that in the midst of it all, you have a refuge, a source of strength, and a promise of peace. Surrender your hurt to Him today. Lay it at His feet, and let Him exchange it for His peace, His guidance, and His victory. The end of your story is not pain, it is the fulfillment of His promises and the revelation of His glory in your life. Beloved, as we bring this message to a close, let me remind you of the truth that should anchor your soul. Your pain does not define you, it refines you. The God who created you, who knows the end from the beginning, sees every tear you've cried and hears every prayer you've whispered in the silence. Your pain is not unnoticed, and it is not wasted. It is the tool God uses to mold you, the fire He uses to refine you, and the process through which He reveals His glory in you. Whatever you are facing, know this: God is present. He is not a distant observer, but an active participant in your story. He walks with you through the valley, holds you in the storm, and strengthens you for the journey. The very pain you fear will overwhelm you is the soil where your greatest purpose is being planted. Trust Him. Surrender to Him. Let Him exchange your sorrow for His joy, your confusion for His guidance, and your despair for His peace. You were not created to live a life of defeat. You were created to be victorious, to overcome, and to rise above every trial. Pain is a passage, not a destination. It is the bridge between where you are and where God is leading you. And trust the one who holds your future in His hands, for He has promised that all things, yes, even this, will work together for your good. Take heart, my friend. Your story is not over, and the author of your life has written a beautiful ending. Walk forward in faith, knowing that He who began a good work in you will carry it to completion. And when the world sees the fruit of what God has done through your pain, you will testify not of defeat, but of a God who is faithful, compassionate, and mighty to save. Trust Him and let His promises sustain you. Your best days are still ahead.